What's up, guys? So we've had some big UFC news recently, some big fight announcements to go over in today's video. So I'm going to go over all of the recent MMA news and just give my early prediction and breakdowns for a few of these matchups that have been made recently. But we're going to just start off by not a confirmed matchup, but just talk about Conor McGregor versus Justin Gaethje just for a little bit because um, after Justin Gaethje's big win at UFC 291 on Sunday. Conor kind of called him out, said sign the con. Oh no, Conor said like fight me, F Chandler. You can call for it, you want it. Gaethje after the fight in the post-fight interview, he's like, no, nah, I'm not fighting Conor. I'm not fighting a guy on steroids. But then since then, just the other day, he tweeted at Justin Gaethje. He tweeted at Conor McGregor saying sign the contract, big boy, all of that stuff. And now there seems to be a possibility that they could end up fighting each other. So I'm just going to talk about this matchup. And the reason why it honestly is more likely to happen than you might think. Um, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, what about the Chandler matchup? Well, he's fighting Chandler. What about the tough thing? All of that. But I think you guys got to realize is Michael Chandler has not done that much in terms of promoting the fight. Like they've done this season of Tough. The numbers are terrible. I haven't even watched Tough the show, but I've heard it isn't anything memorable. The only thing you really get is just we just want to see drunk Conor and stuff because it's funny, but no one actually really cares about Michael Chandler on the show. So he's really not doing a good job of expressing like getting people to really show their interest and be interested in this fight because no one's talking about damn Conor versus Chandler December this year. We can't wait to see it. Like now we're talking about that fight like it's probably not even going to happen, and we're probably going to get something else, which will be just as good, if not better, and a bigger fight too. Because Justin Gaethje sells more pay-per-views than Michael Chandler, and that's a fact. Especially now with the BMF belt, as like cringy as you want to say it is, maybe, or as illegitimate as a belt if you think it is. Um, there's no denying that to the casual audience, if they see a belt on the line and they see Conor McGregor, they're a lot more likely to click buy than if it's just Conor versus Chandler, with both of them coming off a loss, and Michael Chandler, who pretty much all he's done this season of Tough to try and promote the fight or get any interest in it is to just kind of suck up to Conor and really not make anything interesting. He hasn't really trash talked him that much. His team has won pretty much the whole season of Tough so far, but no one's really caring about it. And it's pretty obvious that Conor didn't really care that much about Tough. He just kind of showed up, wanted to get a paycheck, or just collect some money for doing that, get some interest because he loves his relevancy. Conor always loves when he can make himself relevant, get his name in the kind of headlines. So a season of Tough is a decent way to do that. But the viewership of the season's been pretty low, and there just hasn't been all that many interesting moments. The only like things are the fights, and then occasionally you get some back and forth with Conor and Chandler. But apart from that, it's just backstories of these fighters, which no one really cares about. So I'd much rather see a Justin Gaethje fight, to be honest. As a Justin Gaethje fan too, um, I'd love to see him. I'd love to see him fight Conor because I can almost guarantee you that he would win. With how he looked against Poirier and with how Conor's been looking recently, how he's just been kind of taking not taking his career that seriously. He's on yachts all the time. He's doing cocaine. It's pretty clear. Like he's not as invested in his fighting career anymore as he was in 2015-16 when he was in that world title kind of level. Right now, he's an unranked lightweight that haven't hasn't fought since July of 2021. And by the time he comes back, let's say he comes back in December, that's like what, 18 months or close to 20 months off? No, more. Hang on. Yeah, because it's been all of 2022, all of 23, and like half, yeah, so even more, like, so 30 months almost. Connor's been out of the game. So there's really not a lot of hype behind him right now. And that's what you think. That's what the UFC wanted. They want the whole return of Conor McGregor to be this big hyped up thing. But because he lost his last two fights, one of them by injury and one by TKO, or by KO by Dustin Poirier, who's now just lost to Justin Gaethje. Fans don't have a lot to be excited for in terms of where Conor is coming back. Like we know it's going to be scenes. We know the press conference is always going to be good. We know he's going to bring the numbers and the pay-per-views to the fights. But if you tell me what's a more compelling fight, and you say like Conor McGregor versus Justin Gaethje or Michael Chandler for December, or Ilya Topuria versus Volkanovski, or like Alex Pereira versus Yuri Prochazka, in terms of just the build up and what would sell the most, obviously Conor by far. But in terms of what's actually a competitive and relevant fight right now to the landscape of the divisions, I'd rather see like a Yuri Prohaska versus Alex Pereira main event, Volkanovski versus Taporia co-main event. If you give me that with a solid undercard underneath those two fights as well, you give me that over like let's just say Conor versus Gaethje main event and like a kind of shitty co-main event. Because when they do Conor fights, like Conor's last fight was co-main evented by Gilbert Burns versus Stephen Thompson at UFC 264. So it's pretty clear the shine is always on Conor when he fights. Like they never really build a card underneath it. But I'd rather two actually relevant title fights that are more competitive than just Conor versus Gaethje, who I know is going to smoke him, or Conor versus Chandler, who I know would smoke him if he wrestled or if he fought smart. Um, Obviously there's the possibility he lands the shot on anyone. Like he's got the power, we know, but I just don't back him to be as quick or as reactionary and as good as he was because like we saw him look considerably worse in the third Poirier fight than the second, and that was only after like 6 or 7 months, and that was after being TKO'd. And then he's now coming back after a leg break, probably not going to have as much confidence in the cage. As much as he's going to talk in the lead up, he's probably not going to be all that confident in his skills um, or in himself to really like be a durable kind of guy anymore. Like he's fighting, if he fights Justin Gaethje, that's one of the best leg kickers in the lightweight division, and he's going to put that leg of Conor right to work and make sure he's checking kicks because otherwise this fight could get honestly stopped by leg kicks if I'm being real. If Gaethje just goes to that, but if these two are to fight, I'm obviously going to pick Justin Gaethje to win by a KO, TKO, whatever. I don't see this fight going past the second round. I do believe that he's going to make easier work than he did with Poirier, easier work than he did with Fiziev, easier than Chandler. All of his other recent wins, Ferguson, all of that, Cerrone, Barboza. He's going to make this look like his easiest fight to date, probably. Um, and it's kind of sad for Conor because this is a guy who once was the double champion, was the featherweight lightweight champion. Talking about like and went into the Khabib fight, and if he'd won that, I know you don't talk in ifs, but if he wins that, he's like one of the greatest fighters of all time. Even though he didn't have the defenses, but like imagine having where we look at Khabib now. Imagine him beating Khabib, like let's say he KO'd him, or in that third round when he was putting it on him a bit, when Khabib wasn't shooting takedowns. Let's say he catches him with an uppercut and TKOs him against defense. That's a guy in Khabib who people are now calling top five, top 10 goats of all time, a goat of the lightweight division. And after that, if I'm being honest, in that stage of his career, I do think Conor would have beaten the Justin Gaethje, and I do think he would have beaten the Dustin Poirier. Um, but he's just taken too much time off. He fought Khabib in 2018, fought Cerrone in 2020, and then Poirier twice in 21, and it just hasn't looked that good. Cerrone was his impressive performance, but that's Donald Cerrone who was pretty much just brought in there as a name that people knew to get Conor McGregor an easy win. Um, but these two, if they do fight, which I do think is a very solid chance of happening, Gaethje is going to just pick him apart with everything. There's no real area where Conor wins this fight. He just has to make Gaethje sort of emotional, overextend, and get into the wrong type of fight with him, like with Eddie Alvarez, how he was just so angry going into it and he was just over swinging and getting countered. But I don't see this kind of juiced up now coming off the juice. Um, Fucking just muscle bound Conor who hasn't been like training properly for MMA now. He's just like he's lifting weights and he's getting big, but he's not like an MMA fighter anymore. Really, like this guy's popping into cardio kickboxing classes on fucking Fridays. Um, and just that's about the effort that he's willing to put in right now. So I just don't see this going well for him at all, and I do think Justin Gaethje is going to absolutely tear him up with the kicks, with the boxing. He's so much tighter than he was a few years ago when he was that loose kind of wild fighter that would get caught up in a brawl and then probably get countered by Conor. But now I think he's so much more patient. He knows what he's doing here. And if he was to beat Conor McGregor in December, let's say, um, then that would be obviously a guaranteed title shot, which I think he would have. I think he can wait if he wants to, but he also knows the money that comes with a Conor fight, and he's obviously extremely confident in his ability to beat Conor, like a lot of people are. So I do think he would win this fight handedly in the first or second round. I think he would KO Conor McGregor with a big punch, with a right hand maybe, or a head kick maybe again with Poirier, or just chew up his legs and get like a kind of TKO of like what Poirier got. Chew him up with the leg kicks and then piece him up against the fence. But ultimately, I do believe Conor McGregor would get smoked in this matchup. But we'll see what happens. But now let's move on to some actual fight announcements that are official. Um, Johnny Walker versus Magomed Ankalaev for October 21st. That's UFC 294 in Abu Dhabi. It's a really big matchup in the light heavyweight division, and the winner of this could arguably be looking at a title shot, maybe, or one fight away from one. Both these guys, or Johnny Walker coming off a win streak, beating Ion Cutelaba, Paul Craig, and then Anthony Smith. And he's, I think, around sitting at number 5 or 6 in the light heavyweight division. Magomed Ankalaev, also his last win was against Anthony Smith, and then after that he had that draw with Jan Blachowicz, where if any one of the two of them was going to win that fight, it would have been Ankalaev on the scorecards. But I do think Ankalaev's going to win this fight. I don't want him to. I would love to see Johnny Walker win by just doing something absolutely stupid and just landing a big shot on him, KOing with a knee or an uppercut. But I ultimately think Ankalaev's just very technical, knows what he's doing, very patient, got the wrestling as well. We've seen Johnny Walker get taken down. But Walker's always got that power, so it'll be an interesting fight and a really good addition for that October card. Like Walker's kind of path to win here. He's got to really use the range. Anthony Smith did say that he was struggling with the range of Johnny Walker a lot in their fight. Um, so what he's got to do is really keep that range, kick Ankalaev at range, and try and frustrate him and get him to come in with a takedown and just counter him with a big left hook or a right uppercut or a knee or something like that, and just catch him and put him out because I don't see him winning this fight over 3 rounds by decision unless it just doesn't go to the ground and Johnny Walker's just so much better than him on the feet. I do think the leg kicks are going to be big here. Jan Blachowicz was able to chew up Magomed Ankalaev's legs when they fought. I think Johnny Walker could be aiming to do a similar thing. But ultimately, I think Ankalaev just mixes it up too well and is too technical. And ultimately, I still don't trust Johnny Walker's chin, even though he hasn't been knocked out for the last 3 fights. But that worry's still always there, and I could see Ankalaev just catching him with a shot as well. If Walker leaves himself open. So ultimately, I'll go with Magomed Ankalaev to win that fight, but definitely rooting for Johnny Walker. The next matchup that's been made, Adrian Yanez versus Jonathan Martinez, October 14th. That's a fight night card. Not even headlines, but that's also got Barboza versus Sadiq Youssef on that card as well. So looking like a good card so far. In the Apex, which is a bit weird, this is a really exciting fight. Would have loved to see this one in front of a crowd on that like September 16th Mexican Independence Day card. Um, but ultimately, I'll slightly lean with Adrian Yanez in this matchup. I do think his boxing and his striking is a little bit crisper. After what we saw against Rob Font, his defense is a worry. He got jabbed up in that fight and then put away with the right hand from Rob Font. But that's Rob Font, who arguably has some of the best hands and the best boxing in the bantamweight division. So I don't think Jonathan Martinez is at that level where he could piece Adrian Yanez up on the feet. I do think the veteran experience of Martinez is a worry and something that could cause a younger guy, less experienced guy like Yanez some issues. He mixes it up well, gets some takedowns here and there as well. Had a really good fight with Said Nurmagomedov recently, which he won by split decision. But I do think Yanez is just a little bit crisper on the feet with the boxing. And I do see him being able to catch Jonathan Martinez with a shot or just win on the feet over 3 rounds. He's going to definitely be working his takedown defense in this fight and working his defense in general because that Rob Font fight really showed some holes. I did pick Rob Font to win um, that fight because I looked at a few of Giannis's other fights and he was getting jabbed up, and I said Rob Font's a much better boxer than these guys. He's going to piece him up. Um, so I did predict him to lose that fight, but ultimately I think he's just a bit better than Martinez. A little bit. The youth could help him in this one. I'm not sure how old Martinez is. I'll just check it now. Um, Jonathan Martinez is 1994, so he's 29 years of age, I believe. So he's not wait 1994. So wait, hang on, he's younger than Yanez. That's interesting. I actually didn't think that. Um, but regardless, Yanez is 5-1 in the UFC. Martinez 9-3, so he is the more experienced guy in terms of octagon time. He's fought like Cub Swanson, Saida Magomedov, but Yanez has had some really impressive showings, and I think when he gets the hands going and he gets the boxing going here, I do think he's going to be able to either put Martinez away or just piece him up over 3 rounds and win a decision. But I'm going to move on to the next fight announcements that's been made. It's Tatsuro Taira versus David Dvorak. Um, it's a really interesting fight in the flyweight division. Tatsuro Taira coming off a relatively impressive win at UFC 290 over Edgar Shirez. Went through a bit of adversity there, kind of got shown to not be at the level on the feet, which you would probably want to see him at. Um, but I ultimately think he's going to win this fight. David Dvorak did not look good in his last fight against Steve Erceg. Credit to Steve Erceg, he came in on short notice as the eternal champion and had a really impressive showing. But I think he showed that he could get takedowns on Dvorak. I think Tyra's grappling is going to be the big difference maker here. I think he's going to clearly win this fight through the grappling. He was able to take down pretty much everyone that he's fought. He dominated Shirez for pretty much the whole fight when it was on the ground. But on the feet, he does still have a few worries that need to be taken care of. Before I'd be comfortable to pick him against any of those top kind of guys. I just think Dvorak didn't look good on his last fight at all. He got shown to be a little bit exposed by Steve Erceg, who again credit came in, but on as a short notice opponent. I mean, it doesn't favor either of them, but on a full camp here, this fight is also, I believe, October 14th. Let me just check that. Yeah, October 14th for this one as well. So a few good fights on there now. David Dvorak's got that number 15 ranking, so I guess the UFC kind of looked at this one and said this is the best fight we can get this guy into the rankings with, and then they're going to start looking to build him. But obviously, the youth of Taira can be an advantage or a disadvantage. He's still working on a lot of things in his game. His striking still definitely needs some work, I'll be honest. But ultimately, I think he's going to just take down David Dvorak and just submit him on the ground, I do believe. He didn't show the best grappling defense against Steve Erceg in their fight. He got dropped with a big shot, and then I think he got dominated on the ground for quite a bit of that round. But he was also looking decent in the first round against Steve Erceg. But still, I think Tyra's just going to be improving a lot quicker than a David Dvorak at this stage in both of their careers, and I think he's going to win this fight by submission. The next fight announcement, we're going to go through these ones quicker. Drew Dober versus Ricky Glenn. This is the most clear-cut prediction I've ever had to make. Drew Dober is absolutely going to lose this fight because Ricky Glenn is white. He's not a dark-skinned man, so there's no way Dober can beat him. No, I'm just kidding. Drew Dober is going to absolutely smoke Ricky Glenn. This is a guy who KO'd Bobby Green, KO'd Terrance McKinney, and KO'd Rafael Alves, and now he's fighting Ricky Glenn, who's coming off an absolutely shocking performance where he got KO'd by old man fucking Christos Yargos and looked slow as hell in that fight. So I do believe that Dober's going to absolutely start Ricky Glenn and put him away in the first round. He's got the speed, got the power, got the physicality. Ricky Glenn is like the most or the least physically intimidating individual that I can come up with. I'm just going to show you a photo of this. Look at this guy. Look at this weird ass motherfucker here. Look at this Ricky Glenn here. This weird guy. Um, there's absolutely no way I'm picking him to win this fight. But ultimately, if he somehow pulls this off against Dober, then I guess the tales are true, and Drew Dober can only beat a melanated man. But all jokes aside, picking Dober to start him in the first. Next fight is Terrance McKinney um versus who's he fighting? Breeden. He's fighting Mike Breeden is fighting him next week as well. So an extremely short notice fights has been made. Lando Venata was going to fight was going to fight Mike Breeden. Lando Venata pulled out, and they're getting Terrance McKinney back in there on short notice. And less than a month turnaround since his last loss by submission to Nazim Sadikov. I ultimately do think he's going to win this fight, though. I think this is one of the winnable fights for him at lightweight, and a good fight to get his confidence back because had some tough losses recently. Got KO'd by Dober. Lost to Nazim Sadikov. I think he had a loss in between there as well. I think a win too, but um, lost to Bonfim. He got KO'd by Bonfim with a flying knee. So this should be one to get his confidence back, but you never know. Short notice, coming off a loss, might be just no confidence and lose this fight. But I ultimately don't rate Mike Breeden that highly, and I think Terrance McKinney should win this fight pretty comfortably. The next one is Bryan Battle versus AJ Fletcher. I'll be picking Bryan Battle in this fight. I think he's more powerful, he's quicker, and I think he's just a better fighter overall than AJ Fletcher, whose only real notable win recently is over Themba Gorimbo, who's only really known for getting a house bought for him by The Rock. Well, that happened today, apparently. So congratulations to Themba Gorimbo for getting a new house. But that's the only reason he's really relevant, and for like getting money from Colby Covington or something and being teammates with him. But in terms of his fighting ability, I don't rate that win that highly for AJ Fletcher, and I think Bryan Battle in his last fight absolutely starched Gabe Green. I get it. Green kind of ran forward at him like an idiot and got KO'd, but I just ultimately think Bryan Battle is better. He's only lost in the UFC is to Renat Fakhretdinov, and that's no shame on anyone's record to have a loss to that man. So I do think Battle's going to win, probably by maybe a TKO or decision. Next fight, Bill Aljeo versus Anthony Hernandez. Sorry, Alexander Hernandez. Um, there's a terrible move for Alexander Hernandez moving down from lightweight. He's like 6-5 in the UFC. Really needs a win here. But Bill Aljo is a long, rangy guy. Who is like just a better striker in my opinion than Alexander Hernandez. He's coming off a win. Hernandez over Jim Miller. At lightweight, but now he's moving down. Like Bill Aljo beat TJ Brown. Joe Anderson Brito's a really good win to have on your resume. Hernandez, he beat Beneil Dariush, which is crazy to say. But moving down to featherweight, I just don't like the move for him. I think his chin's probably going to be a bit suffered. And I ultimately don't think that a guy who was struggling to keep a pace against Jim Miller is going to have success down a weight class, which is normally known for when you're cutting a drastic amount of weight to affect your cardio and affect your conditioning. So I think he's going to lose this fight by either TKO or decision and just get outclassed on the feet. The last fight announcement, also the next like somewhat notable one, Vitor Petrino versus Modestas Bukaukas. This fight is for the November 4th card, which is meant to be in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I'll be picking Vitor Petrino to win this fight by some nasty, nasty methods. I do think he's going to absolutely smoke Modestas Bukaukas, who's coming off a good 2 wins over Zach Pauga, and then before that it was Tyson Pedro. But I think this is where the kind of return to form ends. I think those two guys are not the level physically of a Vitor Petrino. I think Petrino in his last fight against Marcin Pachinau showed really good grappling, really good wrestling, and he's obviously got the power for days that he's shown in a few of his fights where he's gotten finishes over some decent opposition. Um, so I think he's going to win this fight quite comfortably. But you never know. Maybe Modestas could win and he's on some kind of return to glory and he's going to fight Khalil Roundtree again and get knee stomped. Um, but those are all the sort of relevant fight announcements. There's a few other smaller ones. We've got Morgan Cherry versus Manolo Zagecki or Zucchini. Zucchini. His name's Zucchini, guys. These guys are both making their UFC debut. This is for the Paris card. In France. I ultimately don't know either of them. Let me see. Zucchini's got a slightly better record, so I'll pick him because I've got no clue. These guys are both debuting. Next one, Miles Johns versus Dan Argueta. I'll pick Dan Argueta in this fight. This is for the September 23rd fight night. In the Apex, headlined by Gamrot and Fiziev. Um, Pretty good fight. I do think Argueta's just better on the ground than his last fight, which got stopped by all nonsense Keith Peterson. I think he was going to win that fight by submission, and the referee kind of saved the other guy. But he should win that fight. Fernando Padilla versus Carl Nelson, September 16th. I'll be picking Padilla. He showed out really impressively against not Alex Caceres. Who's the fucking guy? I'm an idiot. Padilla. I know Julian Erosa. Yeah, he fought Julian Erosa in his debut. And looked really good. TKO'd him in the first round. A little bit of an early stoppage, but still looked really quick in that fight. Kyle Nelson. Um, had a no contest against Doo Choi, and then had a decent win over Blake Builder, but he kind of is just a bit of a fraud there, Blake Builder, and he got kind of shown. I don't rate Nelson that highly, so he should lose this fight. And the next one, Dennis Buzka versus Sean Woodson. That's for this weekend's card. It's a short notice replacement. I'll be picking Sean Woodson. Obviously, I don't trust the guy coming in your debut. He's 11-2, so a decent record, but he's a young guy as well. And I just think he won't be ready for the level of Sean Woodson. When we see are there any other ones to talk about, there are not. So those are all the fight announcements, guys. Conor vs Gaethje possibility could be happening, and if Gaethje wins that, he's one of the fighters of the year. But anyway, those are all the fight announcements, and I'll see you guys in the next one, which will be the Font vs Sandhagen recap. Peace.